Okay, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the MACC policy meeting, Monday, February 25th, in Holland Charter Township on this wonderful day. Every day is a wonderful day in Holland Township, right? Yeah. We'll start out with the introductions. To my right,
Thomas Planner for the MACC. Dennis Kent, MDOT Grand Region Office. Kevin Kleinstra, City of Zealand.
John Lanham sitting in for Eric Mullen from MDOT Statewide Planning Section.
Nancy DeBoer, City of Holland.
Russ Teslau, the MACC Authority Board.
Joe Bauman, Ottawa County Board of Commissioners.
Howard Bauman, Port Sheldon Township.
Todd Walters, Holland Township.
Ken DeWeert, Fillmore Township.
Glenn Nykamp, Zoom Township.
Perry Nienhuis, Holland Township.
Tom Bird, Ottawa Road Commission. Jim Story, Allegan County Board of Commissioners.
John Financial, Allegan County Road Commission. Skip Keeter, Park Township.
Tim Berkman with the MACC.
Pankaj Rajadhyaksha with the MACC.
Joe Speldy with the MACC.
Carolyn Alston with the MACC.
Rob Mink with the MACC.
Mara Durkee with the MACC. Ellie Howard with the MACC.
Thank you. And if you've had a chance to read the minutes, if there's any questions about the minutes or changes, if not, we can get a motion to approve them as submitted. Terry, second.
Support.
Terry, Skip. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, great. All right, public comments. It doesn't look like we have anyone from the public here, so we'll move on to our program. Carolyn, I believe, is first up with the safety targets.
I'm bringing my water bottle because I might have to talk quite a bit up here.
Okay.
I've got some resolutions that have been determined that I should read through.
Yeah, we'll run through them.
That'll be fun for us. Okay, to start, our first presentation for transportation are safety targets. This might feel a little familiar to you. We did this last year for the first time. So every year the state is coming out with new safety targets for our performance measures, and it's going to be a yearly piece. And the targets change every year based on a 5-year rolling average. Kind of just to summarize to start off, the state and therefore also the federal government is really moving towards a performance measure kind of driven analysis of how our programs are doing. So beyond safety, we also have in the past, as you probably have seen, bridge performance measures, pavement, like how we do with Pazer, culverts, so many different types of performance measures that we will be trying to live up to with our program. So this is just the safety one, and it's that time of year where we're renewing safety. So to kind of start off, MDOT released its 2019 state targets, I believe it was back in August, and then we as an MPO had X amount of days, which would be up to 2 days from now, February 27th, to either establish the state targets or we could develop our own. The targets mainly for safety pertain to fatalities and serious injuries. So this is also in the packet. So this is what it's showing the baseline through year 2017. So this is that 5-year rolling average to then determine the 19 targets. So again, it's fatalities, fatality rate, serious injuries, serious injury rate. And then it even breaks it out a little bit further down to non-motorized fatalities and serious injuries. So we'd be looking at our non-motorized like bicycles, pedestrians. So then what you may have also noticed that the baseline and then the target numbers, the target tends to be a little bit higher than the baseline. And it's kind of like pavement in the same way that we are expecting over time that those rates are actually going to increase. So we might see increased levels of injuries, of crashes, And it's kind of like the same thing that we see in pavement performance measures. We know that even though we have a greater investment in money for our roads, we know that it's not enough to keep up with. So we know that, for instance, road quality over time, we're expecting it to get a little worse every year, even with extra money. And the same is very true with the safety side of things. As we know, when our economy is doing well, people drive more, people have a greater access to vehicles, and then therefore we have more cars on the road where you're going to have more conflict. We're also seeing a rise in distracted driving. So there's a lot of things that the state, as well as the federal government, are doing to try to reduce those on their behalf also. And I'll talk to you a little bit more about that. So part of this resolution for the safety targets, it's essentially saying that the MACC will work with the state to address fatalities and serious injuries in our area. So a way to do that is to integrate into our planning process with our long-range transportation plan, our TIP, the safety goals, objectives to meet those standards. And then another criteria is when we say that, yes, we will adopt these safety targets, we're also saying that, our TIP will clearly state that everything in there is to help promote better safety targets for our area. So we're basically saying that, yes, these jobs in our TIP help to meet the state standard. So before I get a little bit into our local data, because I wanted to bring it back home a bit, kind of going back to what the state's doing on their end, the federal government for nationwide has the program called Towards Zero Deaths, which we've talked about a couple of times, I think, here in the past. Towards Zero Deaths is another way that the state is really taking charge in addressing these issues. So it's an educational campaign. I think there's also some funds possibly that go into that program to help limit crashes around the state. And that's a national program. So that's one thing that they're doing. But again, I wanted to kind of bring it back home to our area. This is within the MACC area. That's 5 years also, the 2013 to 2017. So in our MACC MPO boundary area, there have been 56 fatal crashes, I believe, so 56. I think those are the actual crashes themselves, not necessarily the main fatalities, but 56 crashes. And then the bicycle involved, there have been 6, and pedestrian involved 8 over the past 5 years in the MACC area. And so these are some maps that show where we see these. So these are for crashes involving a cyclist. And kind of the main thing that we can kind of pick out that there definitely are along major corridors. So you have Riley Street, Chicago Drive, 31, and even kind of this river area in Holland. Those are kind of, they're larger, faster roads that we see that happening. And pedestrian involved crashes, fatal crashes, again, very heavy along 31, very fast traffic, and we see that again. So I wanted to bring that back home. I also would really encourage you, so this information came from Michigan trafficcrashfacts.org. Joe's gotten to know the program really well in our office. So yeah, if you take some time, it's a great resource, and I would really suggest hopping on there. You can look at your township specifically, the county. You can put in different jurisdictions, and really convenient for us at the MPO, we can even put in the entire just MPO boundary. It's smart enough to know where that would be from the MACC. So that's really nice. Great website. It can give you reports on things throughout the state, and I would encourage you to take a look at that. Very helpful. Before reading the resolution on the safety targets, because it is the MACC staff's desire to follow the safety targets set by the state instead of creating our own, would there be any discussion around that before I read over the resolution itself? Any comments or anything you want to talk about safety related? Yeah, Bert.
Carolyn, question. We've had the discussion about why we're using the state's goals and targets rather than our own. But no one has ever explained, I think, what happens if we don't meet those targets. Is there a penalty? Are funds in jeopardy? Is there additional oversight from the state?
I think I maybe opened that up.
There's no penalty. There's no, basically no penalty. And you're basically just supporting the state targets. You're saying basically that what you do in the area, your initiatives are helping the state achieve their targets. So there is no penalty, no.
And so the way that we've even already incorporated it into our tip for this next cycle, some of the questions for the application for the tip was asking how safety is involved. So then the narrative that came back to us from all of you would talk maybe about how reflective markings are being added to this project or rumble strips are being added to this project. There was another project that was submitted for the tip where the grade, they were going to change the grade a bit. It's a reconstruction around a curve because around that they saw some issues with a couple crashes that they already had. So saying that, we've noticed that there's been crashes, we think it's because of this grade around the curve. They'll be addressing that when they do a reconstruction. So things like that, that's helping, showing that we're doing something. And again, it's kind of the sad part of it, but we assume that we probably will always meet the standard because we see that the standard is getting easier to meet in a sense, because it's showing every year we're likely going to have more crashes, and then therefore the standard also reflects that too.
Yeah, and that's a good point, Carolyn. A part of the process for these performance measures and the MPOs meeting the performance measures is to include in their TIP document the association of some of the targets to specific measures, as she mentioned. So that's sort of what one thing that our federal partners will be looking for in the documentation of the TIPs related to performance measures is those kinds of statements that tie certain projects to certain specific types of measures.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just like how, so we have the various types of performance measures. So in our tip with all the different projects, some won't be applicable. So for instance, when it comes to maybe pavement standard and we have maybe a non-motorized pathway, it's not necessarily the road itself, so that might not fall under the category of pavement. I could see that, not every type of project or a bridge project, obviously will have bridge performance measures and maybe pavement, but yeah, so each project has its.
But John, to that point, as far as like the example of pavement performance measures, and back to Tom's question, when we adopted the targets for pavement, if we said we wanted to go on our own and develop our own standard, there would have been a penalty, as I understand it, if we did not meet whatever targets we had set. Is that?
Not necessarily. Probably one of the biggest impacts of deciding that you would want to develop your own targets for the measures would be that you would have to develop the methodology, the analysis, and convince the federal government, their federal partners, that your methodology is indeed sound and logical. So it puts an extra burden, let's say, on your resources, staff resources, and et cetera, to have to establish that kind of methodology and analysis to do that. So we contracted with University of Michigan Transportation Research Institute, I think it's called, UNTRI, to help us do the modeling to determine the trends based upon certain variables, important variables, and so did that analysis for us, so that's how we developed the state targets. And if you decide, if any MPO decided to do that on their own, they would have to do something similar and convince the feds that your methodology is sound. So.
It's really not so much a stick, it's more of a carrot. So if you want to play in the game, there are different levels, and it gets up to the federal level, and we have to please that group. And so the state is just doing that so that we can get to the federal money. So it's how the game is played right now. We have to follow those kind of standards in order. Right, and if you want to be granted something, you have to show you're worth it. And part of showing you're worth it is following all these rules.
And again, that's the trend we're seeing with performance measures and that methodology across the board for the past couple of years now. And that looks like the way of the future. Yeah.
John, one other question is, these are Michigan numbers. Is there any look at the regional Midwest, state by state, comparable? Are there any measures that are crossovers?
You know, that in any of the analysis that I saw previous, no, that we didn't really look at any other states. Or we're going to be doing that though. I think starting this summer, we're going to be looking at some peer analyses and best practices from other states to determine how we can maybe improve ours.
Right.
And with the Towards Zero Deaths, because it's a national program, I think that website even might have some breakdown maybe on different regions. Yeah.
Just because it can be helpful regionally. I mean, we all kind of have the same weather patterns, Michigan, Ohio, Indiana. I mean, I don't want to compare to Texas or California type of thing.
No. We don't have toll roads though.
Yeah, there's always different variables in here. But
Being a peninsula, I think that gives us some differences, but same climate, that's for sure.
Good questions. Any more discussion? Okay.
I'll read the resolution. Resolution to support Michigan Department of Transportation state targets for safety performance measures, Resolution 19-01. Resolution of the MACC Tower Area Coordinating Council Policy Committee approving revisions to the Transportation Improvement Program for FY 17 through 20. Whereas the MACC Tower Area Coordinating Council has been designated by the Governor of the State of Michigan as the Metropolitan Planning Organization responsible for the comprehensive, continuing, and cooperative transportation planning process for the Holland-Zeeland, Michigan urbanized area. And whereas the Highway Safety Improvement Program Final Rule 23 CRF Part 490 requires states to set targets for 5 safety performance measures for calendar year 2019 by August 31, 2018. And whereas the Michigan Department of Transportation has established targets for 5 performance measures based on 5-year rolling averages for number of fatalities, rate of fatalities per 100 million vehicle miles traveled, number of serious injuries, rate of serious injuries per 100 million VMT, and number of non-motorized fatalities and non-motorized serious injuries. And whereas the Michigan Department of Transportation initially coordinated the establishment of safety targets with the 14 metropolitan planning organizations in Michigan through the monthly target coordination meetings and through discussions at various meetings of the Michigan Transportation Planning Association. And whereas the Michigan Department of Transportation has officially adopted the state safety targets in the Highway Improvement Program annual report dated August 31st, 2018, as shown in the table below. And whereas the MACC Tower Area Coordinating Council may, within 180 days of the state establishing and reporting its safety targets, establish safety targets by agreeing to plan and program projects so that they contribute to the accomplishment of the state's safety targets or committing to a quantifiable target for each safety performance measure for their own metropolitan planning area. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Macatawa Area Coordinating Council has agreed to support the Michigan Department of Transportation's state safety targets shown for the calendar year 2019, and be it further resolved that the Macatawa Area Coordinating Council will plan and program projects that contribute to the accomplishment of the state safety targets in its metropolitan planning area, consisting of the cities of Holland, Zeeland, the charter townships of Holland, Zeeland, and the townships of Fillmore, Laketown, Olive Park, Port Sheldon. Adopted this 25th day of February 2019 by the Macatawa Area Coordinating Council Policy Committee at its regularly scheduled meeting. Lovely.
Breath now.
So then we'll need to
Yeah,
have.
so we just need a motion to approve the resolution.
I'll move the approval of the resolution as read.
Thank you, Tom. Can I get a second? Joe? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, resolution passes. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. So we have another resolution, but this one is for air quality conformity. And this presentation had a little bit of a hand that Tim put into this, and you'll see why. You'll notice that Tim helped out with this presentation.
There's some fingerprints on it.
So, yeah. Because we talk about air quality every so often with this group, and it's not often enough though, so it can be kind of a weird, confusing subject, especially depending on what avenue we're talking about with air quality. So we did want to put a little bit of background, really kind of spelling it out, because you had the memo, the resolution, and then the entire, that 40-page document, which was the air quality analysis that was put together from the state. But with all that, we just wanted to put this PowerPoint together to kind of really shell out specifically what we're really talking about with this. Yeah, because we have this draft document that the state, it's the urban travel analysis section of MDOT that put together. And then we have the resolution that they helped out with the language. So again, this is definitely all Tim right there. So what does this, what does this mean? I don't think I would have put that in the slide. So I love it. Yeah, so what does this all mean? Why do we have these in front of us? What do they mean? So Allegan County, we have the 1997 ozone standard, which was the 75 parts per billion. And in 2004, Allegan County was designated as non-attainment for that 75 parts per billion, for that 97 standard. In 2010, Allegan County was designated a maintenance area. And then in 2015, the 97 standard was completely revoked, removing all then conformity, which conformity has to do with how our projects impact the standard. And that was completely revoked in 2015 because we had a new standard in 2015 that was established, which was lowered. It was a little stricter, a 70 parts per billion instead of the 75. And so then in 2018, we were then officially under that new standard for Allegan County, designated as only a portion of it non-attainment. So as you kind of remember, is the first time that both Muskegon and Allegan County were able to be partial. Instead of the entire counties of Muskegon and Allegan, we were able to make the argument with transport, saying that it really, it's not the whole county. They agreed to that, and now we're partial designation. So, but then there was a court decision, and it was effective. So with this court decision, effective February 16 of this year, we needed to have conformity determinations, which required that those areas were maintenance areas. And so, yeah, this court decision, even though this makes sense for Allegan, because Allegan is still considered non-attainment, but the entire county, we had to do a conformity on the entire county because 97 standard, the entire county was non-attainment. And because this also has to do with the 97 standard, I'll be coming back to you next month with Ottawa County, because Ottawa County was also in 97. While they're now currently in attainment, in 97 they were not, and they were in the maintenance area. So we're going to do this again next month for Ottawa. So this is not mutually exclusive. So because of this court decision, they argued that we have to run conformity. And the idea of what conformity is, I think, we actually talk about this later, but conformity essentially means that our project lists have to say, we have this piggy bank budget of our air quality, and we have to say that our TIP projects, our long-range transportation projects, are not going to exacerbate the issue. They're not going to go over our piggy bank allowance that we have. And so if you kind of notice in the back of that 40-page analysis, there's Excel sheet lists of spreadsheets of all of our projects. Those are the projects that got run through this modeling system at MDOT. So the Clean Air Act, essentially says that transportation conformity provisions require that MPOs determine that our long-range plan, our TIPs, and associated projects all conform to the state implementation plan, the SIP. Regional emissions, we have to say that, our regional emissions will not negatively impact our air, and the NACs, the National Ambient Air Quality Standards. So again, conformity means that we are complying all of our projects with the SIP, and that they will not cause new violations. All these road projects, they won't increase the frequency or severity, and they won't delay attaining the NAC standards. So basically, the resolution came out. MDOT conducted that conformity analysis, which is putting all of our projects into a model that analyzes how much traffic there would be on those roads, and if we have any widening projects, if that adds capacity, how that would affect the air quality. They took all of our jobs for Allegan County, and they found that we are meeting our limit. So we are not going over our budget. We're all good. So it says that, the MACC accepts the results of the 2015. This is what the resolution would say. The resolution is saying that we accept the results of the 2015 and 97 ozone standards, and that the forecasted emissions, the budget, which demonstrates conformity, we're all good. Our projects are set. So, let's keep this perfectly clear. It's a complicated, weird issue when it comes to air quality conformity, but the idea of conformity is just that our projects aren't exacerbating our air quality issues. And again, we are allowed a certain bank. So if we did have, for instance, 31 was a widening project, we had an extra lane, but based on the length of it, how much it was, and how much we had in our bank, it didn't exceed anything. So we were able to have a project like that. And the really good news is that we should be doing well for the next few years. This is just some background, but what they have been seeing for the air quality numbers is that even in the next 4 to 5 years, the models at least are showing that we will be reaching attainment everywhere. So they think in the state of Michigan in the next 5 years, according to the models, that air quality should be great. And a lot of that just has to do with how the model, of course, is built. We don't know if that's actually accurate and that will happen, but it's at least a good forecaster to maybe give us hope that air quality is going to get better. And a lot of the reasons why are the turnover in fleet, newer cars, and then also just the new technology on manufacturing. So different scrubbers on the stacks of manufacturing plants. Also a lot of, especially in Illinois and Indiana, there are some power plants, just like ours, that were coal that are getting switched to natural gas. So that will change the numbers dramatically. So based on all of that, the new model shows that hopefully in the next 5-10 years, our air quality is going to get much better. And who knows, maybe we won't even have to worry about it too much anymore. So any questions again on this topic before reading the resolution?
And this is why we have a MAC. We appreciate all your efforts, and we're just going to keep breathing.
You do a lot of work.
Yeah, it's a lot of work.
The Allegan portion, non-attainment, is any of that, do they contribute any of that to the transport coming across or not?
So I think, do you mean has the state
Do they recognize?
recognized that?
Yes.
I would say yes, for a couple reasons. We have the West Michigan Cleaner Action Coalition. We meet quarterly. We have someone from DEQ that sits in our group, and he gives reports all the time. So they are very much aware of the transport issue. Another thing that clearly identifies that we all know, and it's recognized, that we do have a transport issue. Every state has to come out with their own air quality plan and how they're going to address their own state's transport issues. And so the state of Michigan came out with ours, or I think it might even still be in the process. They might still be working on it. It might be part of public comment currently. I think it's pretty new. So the state of Michigan, based on models, we even say that the state of Michigan is responsible for a certain percentage, I think, to the state of New York, and there's a couple East Coast states that we say, a lot of our East Coast air pollution does contribute to transport, because our air moves too. It's quite minimal. But then, just like we have a state plan, Illinois, Wisconsin, Indiana, they also have state plans. And their state plans also address the transport issue coming into Michigan. So they are identifying that, yes, we know that our air is going to Michigan. And the percentages are higher than what our percentages are that we're affecting New York State, for instance. Now, then there's a chapter that says, how are you going to address these issues? How are you going to address the issue of your transport? But because based on the model I just mentioned, that says in the next 5-10 years, air is going to be great, they were able to put into their chapters, just like we did in the state of Michigan, saying that based on the model, it should be fine without us even doing anything. So it kind of washes your hands of having to do much. But again, that's based on the model, and that's what they're looking towards. So yes, I would say that it is recognized that it is a transport issue, largely. Anything else?
Good question, Howard. Yeah, and I think several years ago, when Congressman Hoekstra was in office, I think he had made a case for the area that a lot of it was transport. But that was quite a while ago.
Yeah, we really should have a handicap factor to our numbers.
Yes. Yep.
All right, good question. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Larry. And John?
Now, this appears as though that a portion of Allegan County is getting the finger pointed at it and saying, okay, you got the dirty air and you don't. Now, is there a potential for an upside as well, that some of this congestion mediation money will be targeted for that area then? Or is it still a blanket thing? I guess that's one of the questions I've been able to.
Well, with the next tip cycle, the CMAC funding did increase for Allegan. And
Is that based off this then, possibly? I guess if you have worse air, you should.
I think it is,
Right.
based off of this.
yeah,
Based on this zone.
right, based on the designation and the current status, that increased the funding levels for CMAC.
Yeah, those counties that remain in non-attainment or redesignated are getting a higher allocation than those that are no longer in non-attainment.
Okay. Resolution? This one's a bit shorter, so, okay.
Yeah, you want to do it, or?
You want, or did you have another question?
No, I would just, I think you've done a fine job in describing that. I don't see the need for you to read this entire resolution, quite frankly. I mean,
We were just talking about it before the meeting, because I know meetings past over the years, there have been times where they're standing there reading it for 10, 15 minutes, partly because it's being recorded for the public and so forth. But it's also on our website and our packages. So I think,
do you think it suffices
so-
then enough? Okay.
I think we're okay just going to make a motion then for the resolution.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, thank you, Terry. Can I get a second?
Thank you, Terry.
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Switch over, or should I go over the amendment
Just
really quick?
maybe if you can go through it quickly, because we got a lot yet to cover.
Great. All right, so next on our list is the TIP amendment list. For your consideration, the first one listed is our local job, the rest are MDOT jobs. So the first one is 16th Street for the City of Holland. In FY20 with this new TIP cycle, they are being allocated more funds for FY20. It's an overlap year. So with the additional funds, that project is able to move a little bit further west to Collin Park Drive. So they're just expanding the project a little bit further in length because of the extra funds that they're getting in the new TIP cycle. And then from there, the rest are MDOT jobs, mainly traffic safety, a lot to have to do with pavement markings and different reflectivity pavement markings, readings, things of that nature. Any questions on the TIP amendment list for this month?
Some of these will show up because they are more than one MPO.
Yeah, so it's not fully
Regardless of the size or the significance, they have to be in the plan.
Need a motion to make that amendment?
So moved.
Kevin and Nancy, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Well, thank you, Carolyn. I think up next, maybe we typically invite Eric Mullen, but I think, John, you're filling in for him. It's good to see you back here.
Well, you're welcome, thank you. Hopefully I'm an honorary alumnus of this group.
Yeah. And it's always good to have your knowledge and expertise, so thank you.
He asked me to, if I could attend for him, I said, sure, certainly, no problem, my pleasure. So, I don't have any other updates from MDOT or the FHWA. I know that, hopefully that infrastructure condition is an issue with both levels of government, the FHWA and MDOT. So hopefully they're considering plans to improve our infrastructure. So, Carolyn did a good job of covering the safety targets. And next up for the performance measures will be for you to consider maybe some changes to the TIP that reflect language that will associate your projects with not only the safety targets, but the pavement, bridge, and system performance targets that you previously approved. And those are due by May the 20th, I think it is. As well as you'll be working on your new 20 to 23 TIP between now and then as well. I don't have anything further unless you have any other questions.
I have a question.
Sure.
Has the MDOT received any information from the governor's office regarding road funding and how we provide for it?
No, not at my level anyway. Dennis, as a region?
Well, it's an interesting question. We look at, and probably we kind of do this all the time, but we look at different scenarios, sort of what-if scenarios. This is our program that's in your TIP now based on the funding that we know. If we get certain, additional levels, and we kind of look at what else we could do and should do. But there's nothing, like John said, there's nothing formal that somebody has said take this amount of money and you have this, add some projects. But it's kind of an ongoing discussion. We don't have anything firm right now.
Good question. Thanks, Dennis.
Excuse me. Dennis, have you heard anything about a proposal to change the Act 51 distribution formula? I've been reading that has been broached by the new appointed director of MDOT. And for the folks around the table here, right now, the money that goes, that's allocated under Act 51 is what, 39% to MDOT, 39% to road commissions, and the rest goes to cities and villages.
Yes, and there's a piece off the top that goes to transit also.
Right. Mm-hmm.
I don't know, John, unless you've heard something, that's a legislative action, it's not something MDOT can take on by, unilaterally by the director. Honestly, I go back a long way, but discussion's been going on since probably at least the 90s, maybe before that. Whether it would happen again is, that's an issue with the legislature more than us. John, you have anything else?
No, I agree with your comments.
Good questions. Any more questions or comments for MDOT? Okay, if not, we'll move on to watershed project updates. Kelly, I think.
Do you want to let Ryan go first and say point until the end if there's time?
Sure, that's fine. Okay, so welcome Ryan Kilpatrick from Housing Next, and I think maybe he's been here before. And
Is this your first time to this group, or?
My first time in front of this group.
That's
yeah,
what I
okay,
thought.
okay.
Probably some of them individually, but
Yes.
collectively.
I
yes.
see a lot of friendly faces.
Yeah.
So, I'll keep this brief, and hopefully we can have a little bit of a conversation. It's more of an introductory dialogue and a request for your help for me to think about the issues that we're addressing on a more regional basis. Tim and I have had some conversation and felt like this is the perfect body to at least inform kind of some of our efforts as we think about how do we devise regional solutions for more housing supply. So for those of you that I haven't yet had an opportunity to speak with, I'm going to run through a handful of slides relatively quickly. Feel free to interrupt me at any point with questions or comments. Normally this is pretty casual. Really quickly, Housing Next was created out of a 4-year endeavor that was initiated by the United Way of Greater Ottawa County. They spent a lot of time collecting data and discussing the issue of housing generally. And as a result, the two community foundations in Ottawa County came together and decided to fund a full-time position that would be devoted to housing. And that turned out to be me. And so in addition to the two community foundations, we also have the Ottawa County Administrator, Al Vanderberg, on the board, Lakeshore Advantage President Jennifer Owens, as well as the two Chamber of Commerce presidents, the Lakeshore Nonprofit Alliance, and the United Way are all members of my board. And those are the folks who help me kind of make decisions about the trajectory of the organization. And broadly, as we started to think about what is the charge of Housing Next and how do we operate, the intent here was for us to be a collaborative body that brought together multiple stakeholders in a public-private nonprofit partnership to think through the issues related to housing and economic development and talent attraction and retention. These are all important elements to our long-range economic sustainability. And thinking through the fact that it's not just a public issue, it's not just a private sector issue. Our nonprofits are dealing with this on a day-to-day basis. And so how do we develop a new local approach? The other recognition, frankly, was that we could wait around for decades for the federal government or the state government to try to solve our problem for us, or we could take the initiative at the local level and the regional level to solve our problems, and then leverage state and federal resources where it makes sense, but not necessarily tie bar our approach to the federal standards or the state standards. So broadly, these are our goals. We're focused on housing at all price points. We just completed a housing needs assessment that I'll cover with you briefly in a minute. And it says we're short on housing at every segment of the market. Low income, middle income, and upper income. We're just not building enough supply. And so the question is, how do we bring more supply online and do it sustainably so that we're not putting too much stress on your infrastructure, so that we're not putting too much stress on the roads, and doing it in a way that is in partnership with our schools and other community amenities so that we've got balanced local neighborhoods. Specifically, we're focused on the workforce component of the housing need. When Housing Next brings funds or particular investment to the table, it's likely going to be in the workforce category, which we are defining as those households that are earning between $25,000 and $60,000 a year. Those tend to be the households that are working full-time in the community but can't afford to live here. And frankly, that's our firefighters, it's our teachers, it's a lot of our public sector employees, as well as those first few years assembly job workers, first few years in an accounting firm or a law firm. A lot of those younger people are priced out of the market today. And then lastly, we're working to strengthen partnerships with local organizations, whether nonprofit, developers, multi-sectoral government organizations like this one. It's how do we align our interests as best we can to ensure that we're not duplicating or operating counter to activities that are already occurring. So real quickly, it's important for us every time we have conversations about housing to talk about affordability and what we think it means. Very often folks hear affordable housing and they think government subsidized projects. And frankly, that's not what we're talking about. In a couple of instances, there might be some government subsidies, but mostly what we're talking about is people not spending more than 30% of their income on their housing. And for folks who are making $100,000 a year, that's relatively easy in our market today. But for folks who are making $60,000, which is about the average median income, it's harder to spend less than 30% of your income than it was 10 years ago. And for folks who are only making $40,000 a year, it's very difficult to spend less than 30% of income if you're trying to find housing in Ottawa County. So what we're trying to do is find market-based solutions to the lack of affordability, to build more housing product at the right price point. In some instances, we'll have to bring some government resources to the table, but for the most part, there's just not enough of those dollars available. So we want to find market-oriented solutions to this problem. And real briefly, this is an example we use a lot. A young college grad who has an associate's degree, still working on a bachelor's degree, working for a local engineering firm. This worker is priced out of the market today. And there's a lot of reasons for that that are related to the recession, are related to student loans, are related to a lot of things that are outside of our control at the local level. But one of the important ones that we do have control over is how we regulate local land use. And very often across Ottawa County, we make it very difficult for a single adult to have an efficiently sized apartment unit. Many of our local standards have minimum unit square foot sizes that require you to have apartments that are no smaller than 800 square feet or 750 square feet. And for a young woman like this, who's living alone and probably will live alone for another 5 or 6 years until she's ready to make some different life choices, 400 to 500 square feet is really all they need. And that's about what they can afford based on their salary. And this is about what that unit looks like. It's not a unit that's designed for most of the people in this room today. Most of us are at a stage in life where we're prepared for a little bit more square footage. But for our younger workers, it's very difficult to find a unit like this in Ottawa County, mostly because they're not permitted under local zoning. So here's an example of a local zoning ordinance in Ottawa County that establishes the minimum floor area per dwelling unit at over 800 square feet, almost 900 square feet. So it's not accounting for the 30% of households in the market that are single adults with no kids. And so again, this adds to the difficulty. Simultaneous to the affordability issue, what we're finding right now in the marketplace is roughly half of the market is looking for more walkable urban environments with access to transportation alternatives other than single occupancy vehicles. The other half of the market is still very happy with the traditional suburban pattern. So don't get me wrong, it's not a huge groundswell, but roughly half of the market is looking for this kind of product. And what happens when we don't supply enough of that product in the marketplace is the product that is available, its price goes up. So what we're seeing right now is the prices in our more walkable neighborhoods are rising faster than prices in less walkable neighborhoods, where there's less access to transit. So we're seeing dramatic price increases in downtown Holland and in downtown Grand Haven, and in some of the other regions that are walkable. Downtown Zeeland has seen some pretty significant price increases over the last 10 to 15 years. So what we want to think about is how do we build more housing supply that is providing price points and levels of amenity where segments of the market are demanding that level of supply. But how do we do it so that we're still promoting the traditional character of the community, so that we're not building supply that is outside of the norm or that is uncomfortable for local municipalities. And these are example images of the kinds of housing products that are in demand, but only one of these images is permitted in most of Ottawa County. For the most part, our zoning restricts those first three and only permits the fourth. And the fourth is a great product. There's nothing wrong or substandard about a traditional single-family detached home, but it's also not the only product that's in demand in the marketplace. And so what we're trying to do is define where are there opportunities to build in more density along specific corridors, not across every neighborhood, not in every municipality, but are there some key strategic corridors where we could be planning for more density and a greater diversity of housing types? And where do those best fit within the framework of the community? It's not everywhere. And so I have some ideas about that, but you all are the experts in the community. And you all are going to much better be able to inform where a product like this might fit, whether or not this is the appropriate type of product. Maybe there's something very different we should be thinking about. But right now, this is what the demographic data is telling us. So in addition to thinking about higher levels of density in specific corridor-specific contexts, we're also looking at all of these other alternatives to try to close the gap between the cost and our ability to pay for housing. So it's land use planning and zoning is the one, improving mobility options. So right now, for most of us, the only rational choice in the marketplace is to get in our car and drive pretty much everywhere, which is great, which is part of the American system. But for a lot of folks, they would like to have the choice to be able to take the bus. And I was just with Elisa Hookwater this morning. Oftentimes, it's not a rational choice because it's an hour-long wait. And once you've waited for the bus then goes downtown instead of to your destination. And so you then get on a different bus. And it might be 2 hours before you get to your destination from the point that you first got on. And part of that is due to the fact that we have a spread out system of land use, where everything is pretty well spread out and it's difficult to walk from place to place. And we don't have the level of density necessary to support high frequency transportation alternatives. And so the question is, are there corridors where it might make sense to provide for the level of density that would support those mobility options? It's not going to be everywhere, but we think that there might be a couple of corridors where that makes some sense. And then supporting wage growth, we're working with our employers to have that conversation where we can make sense of state and federal programs and use them and still build local community character. We want to do that. We are having conversations with both philanthropic and corporate sources of funding to support more housing construction. And then just looking at the construction process in general and finding ways to innovate. It's still a relatively old model of construction compared to most industries. We're still building houses in generally the same way we did 100 years ago. And we think there's opportunity for efficiency there. So I'm getting close to wrapping up here. Broadly, what we're trying to do is create partnerships, is to figure out where are there opportunities to leverage existing assets. And you all are a big political asset, I think, in the Macatawa area region. And so asking for your support and your advice in thinking through where does it make sense for us to be thinking about alternatives to the traditional housing product? What should that look like? How should we go about it? Your informed decision-making ability is really crucial to our ability to be successful. So real briefly, I just want to give you the data. We had a housing needs assessment conducted by a national firm over the course of 2018. They looked at economic growth projections based on a lot of our corporate partners who are likely to add jobs. They looked at population growth projections. They looked at existing availability of supply and likely traditional demand. And these are the numbers that we're seeing countywide. So overall, we need close to 6,000 additional housing units across all market price points over the next 5 years in order to have a balanced housing market. But then I want to share with you, this is specific to the southwest submarket. So this is the Holland, Zeeland area, and then it also bleeds down into the northern Allegan County area. These are the numbers that we need to hit, and these are the numbers by price point. So roughly 515 market rate rental units are needed in the market over the next 5 years, 350 roughly in that workforce range of $25,000 to $50,000, and then another 850 at the below kind of $25,000 a year price range. And then for sale, actually the biggest need is in that workforce housing. So where I bought my first house was in that price range between $100,000 and $250,000. Those houses aren't getting built today, mostly because it's inefficient for developers to build a $150,000 house today. Once you add the cost of infrastructure, plus building materials, plus land acquisition, plus the cost of financing, there's not enough of a margin in today's system to build a lot of housing below that $250,000 price point. But that's where the biggest market need is right now. And so we need to find ways to build more of that supply. So again, we're looking at building greater diversity of choice within the market. Not a lot of subsidization, just what are the alternative choices to the traditional single-family detached house? It's important to note, in 1960, the average single-family house was about 900 square feet in size. In 2017, the average single-family house was about 2,500 square feet in size. At the same time, over that same 60-year period, the average household size decreased from about 5 people per household to about 2.2 people per household. So we tripled the size of our housing units while the size of our households, the number of people, decreased by half. And so there's a conundrum there that we have to solve for. I'm not exactly sure how we got so addicted to space, but we did. And so we think there's opportunity to build more choice into the marketplace, both for housing and mobility options. And again, this is where you all come in, is I'm convinced that if we design and build infrastructure that supports mobility choice over the long term, people will make rational choices in the marketplace based on what they can afford, based on what's convenient to them. For the most part, we've designed and built our infrastructure based on, frankly, one mode of transportation. And that's worked pretty well for a long time. But I think based on the funding sources that are available today, we're starting to run out of room to continue to grow in the way that we have traditionally under the old transportation model. And so thinking about how do we align our land use decisions and our development opportunities with how you align transportation investment decisions, probably not always going to find ways to align those perfectly, but to the greater extent that we can, I think all the better. So I'm going to skip that slide. Yeah, I think I'll wrap it up there, Tim. That's probably enough time. I would love maybe a couple of minutes of conversation if you've got time for that.
Have you identified any corridors in Ottawa County that you'd be willing to share today?
Yeah, well, so, and this is just based on my personal opinion, right? I think the Waverly and 120th corridor is a really great opportunity where we've got a lot of workforce housing already at the north end here in the township, and a lot of employment at the south end, both in northern Allegan County and in the south end of Holland. Thinking through how do we develop a corridor like that in a way that provides for both mobility and housing choice would be great. Riley is another great corridor, I think, where we've got a fair amount of employment. We've got a lot of shopping amenities. It's close to the grocery stores. So, and then I think River Avenue from downtown and down into the southern portion of Holland, all the way north into the township near Lakewood Boulevard. There are opportunities for a lot of redevelopment there One of the things that I think is important to consider here, and I know I'm throwing a lot of data out, so excuse me for that, but again, in the 1970s, we had an average of about, about 4 square feet of retail space per capita in the United States. And in 2010, we had 35 square feet of retail space per capita in the US. So again, we've tripled the amount of retail space that we've built over a 50-year period. And just as we sort of peaked in total retail development, a guy named Jeff Bezos came along with a company called Amazon and totally flipped the retail environment upside down. So now Walmart is shipping groceries to your door, Meijer is shipping groceries to your door. You can get anything delivered in less than a week, and a lot of stuff will come overnight or 2 days. So thinking again about that retail environment, we've got a lot of functionally obsolete and partially vacant retail buildings along these corridors that probably aren't going to be very viable for retail in the future because the model has been flipped. And so thinking through along those corridors, are there some opportunities to transition that retail into residential and do it in a way that still meets the expectations of the community in terms of form and character and quality, but allows for more people to live in the community at an affordable rate.
Yeah. This is a question only and not a suggestion. Do you know of any municipalities that require, before approval of a proposed subdivision, provision for handicapped individuals and people that can't afford other housing?
Not in the subdivision context. I'm not aware of any municipalities that have a particular ADA requirement associated with single-family homes.
May I ask, would you suggest such a opportunity?
Yeah, well, and in fact, the data really supports that roughly 10% of the population right now has some form of a disability. And so building about 10% of all of our product and 10% of every new product that comes online, on average, if it were able to accommodate folks with disabilities, that's about where we need to be in the building cycle. And so creating those opportunities, and I think building in incentives for the market to do that. It's harder to mandate those things in certain circumstances, but building in a mandate where you might get a slight bonus in terms of the total number of units you can build if a certain percentage are ADA accessible, I think is a great tool for achieving the kind of product that you want to see.
Skip, you had a question? Yeah, I just had a specific. The Harrington School property finally sold.
Yeah.
Have you got any inkling of what the plan is for that property?
Well, I have a meeting with the buyer at 2 o'clock today.
Terrific. I pitched this thing, I don't know how many developers I've chatted with in passing and said, this would be a great place for affordable housing. And when you say affordable housing to a developer, their eyes glaze over because they see no profit opportunity in that kind of housing. I would hope that this person has, whoever it is, has some vision.
Yeah, well, and in fact, it's an individual I've been having conversations with for the last year, and I think they support what we're trying to do. So I think we'll see something good there. It's going to have to meet the requirements of the township, and we'll have to bring Park Township along in it for every conversation. But I think there's an opportunity to find a balance of market rate, high-end and market rate workforce that meets the demand and is a good quality product.
You mentioned that a lot of the costs associated with housing development, infrastructure, that sort of thing have all gone up tremendously. Has the workforce compensation gone up accordingly?
I wouldn't say accordingly. It's gone up. And I think a lot of our builders are recognizing that in order to get young, talented workers to enter the workforce, I was just having this conversation earlier today with Mike Dykstra at Zeeland Lumber. When I was in college, I worked for a residential framing contractor in the summer. And I really liked framing. I kind of wanted to do that. I told my dad, I was like, I think I just want to be on a job site. I don't want to sit at a desk all day. I want to be out using my body. My dad said, well, I'm not going to pay for your college if you drop out and decide you want to go back. He's like, it's now or never. So I finished school, right? And I think that a lot of parents have similar conversations with young folks or teachers, right? We encourage young people to go get a 4-year degree and get a higher paying job than you can find in the trades. And I think one of the things that we've got to do is not only pay a living wage, but also build in those educational opportunities so that a guy like me can say, hey, I really like swinging a hammer now. Maybe I want to do this for 5 or 6 years, but I don't want to close the door on my education as a result. And so giving those kind of both and opportunities where I can be on the job site, work in construction for 5 or 6 years, and they'll help me pay for community college or a bachelor's degree over an extended period of time. Whether it's through a savings account or it's through a matching program, I think all of those things are opportunities for us to try to build into the system so that young people, and frankly, I wasn't ready for college. And I think a lot of people nowadays, they're just not ready for the expectations yet, and yet we haven't given them a viable alternative.
They're not ready for construction either.
It seems that trend has shifted quite a bit, though. I mean, more kids are going to work out of high school into the trades, and or on the factory floor if you're a qualified machinist, start making 80, 90 grand a year. You'd have that option or get a bachelor's degree in literature and $100,000 in debt. So it's changed a little bit, I think. Yeah.
I think there has to be a lot of effort put into our young people on the expectations of the workforce. Honestly, what I hear, 1 out of 5 maybe survives in the construction industry. They're just not ready for it. These kids aren't mature enough right now coming out of high school. It's a big battle you have going on out there. And as a contractor, you put a lot of time and money into these people to train them, and you want somebody that's going to be of a quality substance. So.
Well, great discussion, and certainly if you have any questions about Housing Next, I'm sure Ryan would be happy to talk to you at some other time that works for everyone. Well, thank you for coming. It's much appreciated, and hopefully 20 years from today, the landscape will look a little bit different, or sooner than that.
Thank you, Ron. Can we get a copy of that PowerPoint too?
Sure.
Can that be sent out? That'd be great. Thank you.
We can email that out afterwards.
That'd be great.
We should have passed this on to you. So we're going to jump back to Kelly providing us with an update on the watershed projects and Project Clarity.
So I have just a few general updates before I go over the Project Clarity dashboard. Just a few things that are to make you aware of. We were approached by the West Michigan Shoreline Regional Development Commission to be part of a regional grant application that they were putting together recently through the NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration's Great Lakes Habitat Restoration Regional Partnership Grant, which is a mouthful. So, of course, we jumped at that opportunity and put together kind of a proposal to do more stream bank restoration. We have some of that's starting up this year, but funds were limited, so we're hopeful that we'll be able to secure some additional funds through this regional partnership effort. We had requested just over $400,000 to do some additional stream bank work. Both for projects that we kind of had in the works and also one on the McIntyre River at Paw Paw Park that the Ottawa County Parks is looking at and in the process of designing. So we should find out in August-ish. This grant application was delayed because of the government shutdown, so we're not sure how that will impact the notifications in August. The original timeline was early August, but we'll see if, since the applications were due late, if those notifications will be delayed as well. But the grant would all be managed by the West Michigan Shoreline Regional Development Commission. We would be a sub-recipient, so essentially they would give us the money that we requested, and we would manage our own projects. They would not come in to our area and manage our projects. And so kind of the bonus for us is we don't have to do all the grant management and put the reports together and all that stuff. They have to do all that administration work. We would just benefit by receiving the funding. And most of that work would actually be contracted out. Some staff time would be spent on the grant and we'd be reimbursed for that, but most of this would really just be pass-through funds. So we'll let you know in August or September if that's successful. And then Rob and I are both looking at a grant right now from the Great Lakes Commission. They just issued a request for proposals a couple weeks ago, looking for projects that will make significant phosphorus reductions. So that application is due the end of March. So we're working on kind of coming up with a plan and a proposal right now. So we'll have more details to share on that with you next month. A couple other things just to remind you, this Thursday is the Project Clarity Agricultural Lunch. That is free and open to anyone. You do have to register in advance though to make sure there's enough food. So if you're interested in that, it's on the Outdoor Discovery Center's website, and it will be hosted by Zeeland Township this year. So we thank you for the use of your space. And then we are currently in the process of seeking a couple summer interns to work with the Watershed Project. So if you know anybody, a college student that might be interested, the posting is on our website. I think I put a post on Facebook if you want to grab that and share it. I did receive one application already, so that's encouraging. So now to the Project Clarity dashboard. So you had a copy of that dashboard in your packet. So we received that pretty recently, and it was just timely to get it into your packets and talk about it today. We have not received the full report from the Annis Water Resources Institute, kind of the detailed 100-page report of the monitoring results, but that as soon as that is published, we will put that on our website. So just kind of as a reminder, the Annis Water Resources Institute has been monitoring since 2013, kind of when Project Clarity started. They sample the lake 3 times per year. There's 5 locations that they go to and collect water samples, and then they average all of the numbers together to get the graphs that are in the report. They do also include some historic data that is available, that's comparable as far as being collected at the same locations and timing in the lake. And then just something to make sure you had on your calendars, May 22nd is scheduled for the Project Clarity community update where they'll do the breakfast at Boatworks again. So I mean, that's kind of a save the date at this point. I don't know that the Outdoor Discovery Center is taking registrations yet, but so just mark that date on your calendar and you can get much more detail on the efforts there. So just kind of looking quickly at some of the graphics here. So total phosphorus is kind of the big one that we monitor because that's what our total maximum daily load is for, looking at those phosphorus numbers. And so just to orient you to the graph here, that the yellow meeting goal, that's the TMDL goal, is at 50 parts per million micrograms per liter. So if we're in the red, we're not meeting the goal. And really, where we really want to be is even lower than what the TMDL states, but we're required to meet that 50. And so in here again is this like historic data, and then the line here just represents when the Annis Water Resources Institute started monitoring. So this is their data. And then I don't have any published reports from the DEQ, but we did receive some basic just data numbers, so I kind of added these for comparison. The DEQ monitors the lake every other year, the same 5 locations that the Annis Water Resources Institute does, but different timings. So I just wanted to kind of give you a comparison. Like in 2014, their numbers were pretty similar. 2016, 2018, they're not quite the same. The DEQ numbers are quite a bit higher, but again, it's based on grab samples that are taken at different times. So kind of the biggest take-home message is that these data points are snapshots in time. You can go one day and collect a water sample and go the next day and you're going to get very different readings. But we have to have some kind of data to measure progress. And the progress is really measured by the DEQ numbers because they're the ones that are in charge of our total maximum daily load. So I'm waiting to get the actual published reports. But again, we received the raw data, and so from what I could tell, this is what the numbers should be. So the DEQ picture makes it look a little bit worse than what the Project Clarity numbers say. But we'll see what their trends look like when those reports are actually published. Within, just looking at the most recent data from Project Clarity, it certainly is an encouraging trend. Overall, we can see these, that trend is decreasing. We're going in the right direction. So this is the chlorophyll A, which is a measure of plant material. Chlorophyll is what makes plants green, so it's kind of a proxy for algae in the water. So how much green is in the water can kind of give you an indication of how much algae, not what kind it is, if it's producing harmful toxins, just a general amount. And so again, we have this goal here that we are certainly not attaining quite yet, but again, the trend here, at least the last few years, is encouraging. We're going down. 2016 was certainly a high year. And then again, here are the DEQ numbers for comparison. So looking at the DEQ numbers, they look a little bit better than the AWRI numbers. But again, different times of year that they're taking those samples. And then the Secchi depth, so this is how far you can actually see into the water column. So we want actually a higher number instead of a lower number here. And this has to do with how much sunlight can penetrate, so how much plant growth, and then especially for our sport fish that rely on sight to see, the more we can see through the water, the more those fish can see, and the better their habitat is. So again, we've got, there's kind of all fairly consistent. We've had some better years. These numbers tend to get better when we don't have a lot of rain, because the rain is what delivers that sediment, makes the water cloudy and you can't see through it. Not as easy to see a trend in this. And I didn't put the DEQ numbers up here, but they're very close to what the Grand Valley numbers are. And then I think the last thing that they have in the published report here is looking at the phosphorus numbers compared to rainfall, which is not like a direct comparison, really just kind of looking for a relationship between phosphorus and rainfall. And there is not a clear, significant relationship when it comes to statistics with this. But we know that we are in a system, the Macatawa watershed is a system that is heavily influenced by rain and snowmelt. That's how our phosphorus and sediment, most of it, is getting delivered to the lake. So I think that the take home here is this tells an encouraging story where we have the rainfall in these gray bars. The phosphorus bars consistently have exceeded that until these last few years. Right now, rainfall is consistently exceeding phosphorus. So if we had had this rainfall historically, you can kind of look, this bar is pretty similar in 2006, and we had way more phosphorus than we did in 2018. So I think that's a very encouraging story that we're starting to reverse that trend, that not as much phosphorus is getting delivered in those rain and snowmelt events that used to. So what we're doing on the land to protect and keep that soil and phosphorus in place is making a difference. It's not where we need to be completely yet, but it's encouraging for sure. Okay, so that is the last slide that I have. Questions, comments? And again, we can share the full monitoring report when it comes out, and I've been told the DEQ reports we should have in June, so we can certainly revisit some of that data at that time.
Thanks, Kelly. All right, we'll move on to administrative issues. Tim, I believe, just review the financial report.
Yeah, I'll just take a minute because I know we're running late, but the financial report's in your packet through the end of January, the most recent complete month. We're a third of the way through the fiscal year, and revenues are at 46%, expenses are at 25%. All right. Any questions? All right. The executive committee.
Oh, you said the executive committee minutes.
Yeah, those are in your packet as well. And just one point, I always like to highlight something, but very pleased, if you didn't see it already, to welcome City of Holland to the Community Enhancement Program table. So thank you, Nancy, for your support on that, and excited to have them join that group. And then also, I just brought to the committee, I'd like to have regional topics of interest to occasionally bring to this group more and more, like the Housing Next discussion that was just held. So if you have ideas or things that you think would be good for the group as a whole, please send them my way and let me know.
All right. Well, we're going to honor someone today. But he's not here. But
I think that might be why. But
that may be why. But we'll honor him in absentia a little bit. Terry Hoffmeyer is retiring from Laketown Township, and as most of you know, he's been involved in government service for many, many years and served a number of different roles, and is certainly been a very important part of the MACC. So, Terry, if you're ever watching this, thank you. Among the 3 people that might watch the recording. So, so Tim, I'll let you.
Yeah, we'll take this to him, but we had just prepared a certificate of appreciation to present to Terry. He's been on the MACC board since 2006, and since becoming the Laketown supervisor. And I prepared a very entertaining presentation, but I'll just give you this snippet. Is that in 1961, bringing it to what we talk about and do, gas was 27 cents a gallon, and the cost of a new house was $12,500. And there was also construction on a wall beginning at that point, but that was in Berlin. So, anyways, just want to thank Terry. I've enjoyed his leadership and mentorship in my role, and thankful for his contribution to our area. I will take this to him on all of your behalf and thank him for his service, but I just wanted to recognize him.
Thank you for remembering that and taking that extra step. I'm sure it would mean a lot to him. Moving on to member comments. Terry, Holland Township.
Well, thank you. I want to welcome everybody to sunny Holland Charter Township. I just wanted to, I'll just go back over 2018. I'll give you some of the highlights and maybe get a little into 2019. But I think one of the most significant things that's going on in Holland Township is we're currently constructing a new public safety building, which will house not only our Station 2 fire department, but also a large component of the sheriff, Ottawa County Sheriff, which has always been there. It's just that they were in a facility that wasn't quite adequate, I'll just put it that way, for them and all the people that work out of there and the cruisers that sit there. So anyway, part of our program was to increase the size of our firefighters unit, but also increase the accommodations for the sheriff department. And so once that is constructed, you'll see, I think, more of their presence there. And obviously, the visibility would be much more than where it is right now. It's if you're not familiar with it, it's on James Street, just in back of the Big Lots building there, and it's outgrown that, and the building is getting rather old, so it's time to replace that. The new one is about 26,000 square feet. The foundation has recently been completed in spite of the weather, and so we hope at this time next year that we'll be meeting there rather than here. So, not that this is a bad spot, but we'd like to get you over there, and hopefully, if all goes well, that'll happen. Just, I guess, focusing on the fire department, and I just want to give you a little bit of information on our firefighters and how busy they were in 2018. A total of 833 calls for service were made. Of that total, 137 were medical calls, 104 were rescue calls, and the rest, making up fire, smoke, and other calls, are 592. And these numbers were up. I think it's probably, looking at the totals here, it's one of the highest and most active years for our firefighters. I can't give you all the reasons why, but the facts are there, and so be it. Also, building and development. That's another big year. Our building department issued 630 building permits for a grand total of, the dollar value is $88,673,000. Of that, those permits, 112 were single detached homes. I don't know if any of those were affordable homes, but there's 112 anyway, and that's pretty busy compared to what we've done in the past. So again, a very busy building department. Also, what's recently taken place is we've completed Dutton Park, of course, that was a 2018 project. We completed that, the upgrade of the waterfront there, and that was a wonderful addition, not only an addition, but a rehab of that park. And I wouldn't go down there now today, but certainly would encourage you to visit that when the weather turns nice. It's a great view. Also, I'll just finish up here. We recently completed what we call an asset management plan regarding our non-motorized paths in our parks, and it was pretty extensive, and the gist of it is that parks, not only the parks, but our 70-mile portion of non-motorized paths are going to be in need of repair as time goes. And the question is the numbers are substantial, of course, what we're looking at to get that done, and the question is how much do we want to do per year, and where are we going to get the funds to do that? And so that's one of our greatest challenge, looking down the road 5-10 years. But I'll just stop there. I could keep you here for a while, but we're running late, so we'll bring it to an end. Thank you.
Thank you, Terry, and thank you for hosting us. Any questions for Terry? No?
I guess I would just say, Terry, to work through the Chapman Company and with our MEDC office, our Transportation Alternatives program, for potential funding for your non-motorized efforts. So,
thank you.
The so-called TAP program is what we call it at MDOT.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any comments from any other members before we adjourn? Okay. Just need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Supported, okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, our next meeting would be March 25th at the Zeeland Township Hall.